So today we're going to do a tour of my toolbox. I've broken this video down into 3 parts, so without further ado, we'll get right into it. This is my first toolbox, and I wanted it to have some character. So I commissioned a friend and local graffiti artist to come up with this original design for the outside. Basically, it's a depiction of a wave crashing over the LA skyline, which is silhouetted in the background. It took him about a day to get through the painting on this, and I think it turned out excellent. It gives the box a lot of character, a really unique look. I think it's a little ironic too, because working for Surf Air, I have a big wave crashing over LA. Another important consideration when I was choosing my toolbox is I wanted to have a good workspace. So this is a wooden top toolbox. And a lot of people avoid having wood top toolboxes because they're worried about the wood getting damaged. But I would rather the wood get damaged than any aircraft parts that I'm putting on top of the toolbox. So that pretty much covers the outside of the toolbox. Next we'll take a look inside. I'll show you guys some of the tools that I have and sort of the organization that I've gone with. I've labeled most of the drawers with the type of tools that you can find inside them. Basically, I organize my toolbox with the most important and frequently used tools at the top, and that way they're the most accessible. So the first drawer I'll show you is labeled sockets, and really it's all the ratcheting hand tools that I have. Over here we've got my S&K ratchet set. So this is a 1/4" drive ratchet. It's one of my most frequently used tools. It's pretty small. That's important because a lot of the areas that I'm using this are very tight. There's not a lot of room for, bigger tools. Here I've got my flashlight, also one of my more frequently used tools. Anytime you're doing a detailed inspection on an aircraft, you need proper lighting. So this is one of many lights that I use. This little guy is a palm wrench by Cobalt. This is a small ratchet that I can configure with either different screw bits or sockets. This is great for ratcheting things that are in really hard to reach places. So this tool is called a speed handle. I use it primarily to get out stuck screws, anything that the head's at a risk of stripping out. You can put your palm on the back here and apply a good bit of pressure to the screw, and then rotate the handle to extract the screw. Here I've got magnets and a couple of mirrors and a dog bone ratcheting set. This is also important for close tolerance areas, so if there's a screw that maybe you can't fit a screwdriver on because of its proximity to another part, you would use this dog bone ratcheting set. This tool has come in handy for a lot of different things. It's a torch, but it also can be used as a heat gun and as a soldering iron. So if you're ever somewhere with limited access to power, like on the road, and you need to solder something, this tip will heat up with butane and you can get your soldering job done. If you remove the soldering tip, it becomes a heat gun, which is great for doing heat shrink. If you ever butt splice 2 wires together and need to heat shrink them, this is great for that. And then if you remove that tip, it becomes a torch. The next drawer we'll look at is labeled screwdrivers, and that's pretty much it. It's got screwdrivers. We've got a variety of screwdrivers in here, different sizes, different tip types. I've got my drill gun. This is a Makita, let's see. It's a Makita 12-volt rechargeable drill gun. We've got a couple of different sizes and styles of picks. This is a small ratcheting screwdriver, again, good for getting in tight spaces. A bigger ratcheting screwdriver. A couple of stubby screwdrivers, again, tight to reach places. And here we've got valve grinding compound. This is usually used on reciprocating engines to seat the valves. What I use it for is if there's a head on a screw that's getting stripped out and say the screwdriver keeps jumping, before drilling out the screw and using something like an easy out, I'll put some valve grinding compound in it, and that'll give me just enough grip. It'll kind of fill the gaps, the voids in the screw head, and it'll give me enough grip to get it out. And last but not least, I've got a Cuban cigar because I just went to Cuba, and why not keep one close by? So in this drawer we've got an assortment of wrenches, mainly standard size wrenches since there's no metric used on this aircraft. I've also got a couple of adjustable wrenches. The wrenches I'm using currently are made by Husky. That's a Home Depot brand with a lifetime warranty. They're actually pretty affordable. In this next drawer I've got more wrenches. They're a different brand and a different size. These wrenches, I'm actually not sure the brand, but they're, again, a little bit slimmer profile than the Huskies. They're also a little shorter, which helps for hard to reach places. I've also got Husky ratcheting wrenches. These box end ratcheting wrenches are really helpful for maybe taking off a piece of hardware that you can't reach a traditional socket and ratchet set on. These are automotive trim pullers. I use these a lot on the interior to remove pieces of plastic trim that I don't want to scratch up with something like a screwdriver. This last set of wrenches I actually just picked up, and I highly recommend it. They're really cheap. I think something like $28 on Amazon for the whole set. These wrenches are made by Grip, and they're super slim profile. I'll just show you for comparison. This is a 3/4 inch wrench, and if we compare that to the same wrench made by Husky, you can see it's about half as tall, which really helps when you're working in close tolerance areas. So in this next drawer down, I've got all my pliers. Pliers are an area where you might end up spending a little bit more money. There's certain things I definitely recommend getting a nicer name brand, either Mac or Snap-on, just to get a higher quality plier. And definitely something with a lifetime warranty, since they do wear out. So these are called safety wire pliers. These are used for safetying fasteners. I'll give you a quick demo of how they work. So they've got a jaw here that you can use to cut the safety wire. Once you've cut your safety wire, you're going to thread it through the fastener that you want to safety. When you're finished, you have something that looks like this. So some of the other pliers that I use more frequently are these diagonal cutters. You can use these to cut cotter pins or safety wire. These are called duckbill pliers, good for getting a grip on something and pulling it. These are needle nose pliers. These are good for a lot of things. You can use this to make your pigtail on the safety wire. You can use it to bend over the end on a cotter pin. These are wire strippers for electrical uses. I really need to replace these. These are cannon plug pliers, so they have a plastic insert in the jaw, which lets you loosen an electrical connector like a cannon plug without damaging it or marring it up. These are vice grips, pretty common tool. I don't use them a whole lot here, but they lock down and they can hold things in place or get a good grip on a fastener that's damaged and is having a hard time coming out. So as we get towards the bottom drawers, you're going to notice these are less frequently used tools, more of kind of specialty tools. But I'll still go over them briefly. So this drawer is labeled hammers. Don't use hammers a whole lot on aircraft. There are some things that you might use this soft blow mallet on. This has a rubber end. Any component on the plane that's stuck, you can usually knock it loose with this, very carefully of course. You've got a ball peen hammer. This can be used to form sheet metal. These cutters are referred to as tin snips. You can use this to cut through sheet metal, so if I'm doing an aluminum repair where I need to cut through sheet metal, these come in very handy. Here's a compass. Again, this compass will be used for sheet metal. This will help me draw a perfect circle if I'm cutting out something that's circular. And then last, there's a variety of chisels and punches. Okay, so this next drawer has a lot going on. It's sort of a catch-all. So we've got a lot of electrical stuff in here. Soldering iron, solder, a multimeter, a couple of Ethernet cords. Headset, hearing protection is very important when you're mainly I use those if I'm giving an aircraft a start or if I'm using loud power tools. I want to protect this hearing as long as I can. Here's another piece of lighting. This has come in very handy. It's got a magnetic base to it. It also has a hanger, so I can set this up in a dark work area and really illuminate it. This is one of my go-to lights. And then here we've got an assortment of different files, again used for sheet metal work. This drawer over on the right has got an assortment of drill bits, files, Allen key wrenches. These are screw extractors, easy out extractors to get a strip screw out. This is a little rubber squeegee that I use for smoothing off sealant when we do a sealant repair. Okay, so that completes the Toolbox tour. I wanted to round out this video with a few considerations that I have in terms of tool buying, and especially for new mechanics just getting into aviation. There might be an urge to go out and buy all these tools and spend a whole bunch of money, and it's really not necessary. My recommendation to a new mechanic is to start with just a basic set of tools, doesn't really matter what brand, and then figure out which tools they're using more frequently. Remember, it's okay to borrow tools from someone who's more experienced just to get the job done. And what I did when I was a new mechanic is anytime I would borrow a tool, I would write down the tool I borrowed, and then if I borrowed it again, I would start tallying how many times I was borrowing it. And once I got up to about 3 or 4 tally marks, I would go and buy that tool. And that'll keep you from having a whole bunch of tools that you don't really have a use for. You know, tools are expensive, and it's really not necessary to be spending money on a tool you're not going to use. Now, as far as the brand of tools go, I don't think it's necessary to buy all top brand tools. They're considerably more expensive. The things I like to look out for when I'm buying tools are a lifetime warranty and then a decent quality. The next thing I want to touch on is that the size of your toolbox really doesn't matter. Some of our best mechanics here at Surf Air have some of the smallest toolboxes. So here's a comparison of a small, medium, and a large toolbox. Again, size doesn't matter. Toolboxes can get expensive. You know, you're talking $100 to $300 for a decent quality small toolbox versus several thousands of dollars for a higher quality huge toolbox. And the difference here is probably a $100 toolbox to a $1,000 toolbox. So definitely not something you need to spend money on early in your career. The last point I want to touch on is tool accountability. At my last job, I worked as a technician repairing jet engines, and I can't tell you how many times in a year we'd have an engine that was totaled because a mechanic left a rag or a wrench or something else in the inlet of the engine. So anytime you finish a job, it's important to go back through your toolbox and make sure you have everything you started with. So tool accountability, very important. So let me know if you guys have any questions about some of the tools. You know, I didn't spend a whole lot of time talking about each tool and what it's used for. It would take me a couple of hours to go through every single tool in my box and what it's used for. I more wanted to give you an overview of the layout and the more frequently used tools. But if you have any questions about the specifics, or if you want to see more about tools, just let me know down below and I'll put together a second video for that. The last tool in this top drawer that has come in very handy for me is these flexible extensions. So this flexible extension is good if you can't get a straight shot on whatever you're loosening. You're able to use this flexible extension and still unscrew or tighten it.